Let's get the critical mass of attendees.
Do we start, Nirja?
Yeah, we can start, Srini.
The poll is out.
You want me to launch the poll?
That's what I think Jignesh was suggesting.
Okay.
Let's launch the poll, please.
Launch
and
it
then
and parallelly I can do the
yes.
welcome, right? Because I can't see the poll. Oh, I can see it now. Yeah. Okay. So good afternoon. Welcome everyone. My name is Srinivas. I run the operations for HYSEA, Hyderabad Software Enterprises Association, a 28-year-old association. Most of you probably are familiar with it, whoever is in Hyderabad. For those of you not familiar, we are an industry body, one of the oldest and very unique, focused on Hyderabad and Telangana IT industry with about 300 members, representing almost 90% of Hyderabad's industry, both in terms of exports, revenues, and also the number of associates or employees. So we are very happy to be here today and doing this innovation month. And I'll give you a little background. HYSEA, whatever it does for industry, it does in terms of through the channels of what we call as forums. So these forums are about 5 forums now for the period of 2020-22. Innovation, infrastructure, industry, academia, CSR, and SME. As you can guess from the names, each forum led by a managing committee member focuses on different aspects of what touches the industry. So I wouldn't go into the other forums that are fairly self-explanatory, but on coming to innovation forum led by Isaac Rajkumar, MD of OpenText, and having about a dozen members, very exciting members from our member companies and managing committee, and one of them will soon be in front of you. So this forum, we have decided that while we are leading to our annual innovation summit in November, which we do every year, including our annual awards, we will celebrate this month of August as an innovation month. So, and we said each week we'll bring you one innovator, come entrepreneur, from a world of a different path, not the beaten path that most of us take. They have had the guts to take a different path, tasted success, had an exciting ride, and we said they let them come and share their experiences with our audience, and it could trigger any kind of reactions, right? It could spark some of you to become entrepreneurs yourselves. So that's the whole idea. So I would call in, maybe in this work from home scenario with everybody at home, episode 2 of season 1, if I could call, because we may actually have a season 2 in September, October. Also, we are thinking the group is planning to have some more activities. So episode 1 we had last week, by Sudhakar Reddy of Abhibus. So we are in episode 2. I would like to welcome Aravind Sanka of Rapido, co-founder. And then we have an episode 3 next week by Chris Gali of Graphite GTC, more from the B2B enterprise world. And we'll conclude this with Bhaskar of App Dynamics, so in the last week of this August, last Wednesday. So we are very excited. We hope you enjoy today's session, listening to Aravind. And without further ado, I want to hand it over to Jignesh, our managing committee member and one of the most exciting speakers and dynamic startups in Hyderabad himself. So over to you, Jignesh. Please get Aravind on board and take the session forward. Yeah.
Thank you, Srini. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, very good evening. Thank you for joining us this evening with this interesting and very exciting session with Aravind from Rapido. Let me first introduce briefly about our speaker today. Aravind is the co-founder and CEO of Rapido, India's largest bike taxi company, fighting against the global competitors of likes Ubers, Olas, etc. Now, Aravind is an IIT graduate, IIT Bhubaneswar graduate. He worked with, his first job was with Flipkart in his early career. With only less than 3 years of experience, he went on to found this startup called Rapido, and he scaled it to heights. And today, in fact, very recently, he was listed under Forbes 30 under 30 of the country too. So that's very briefly about Aravind and his background. Without any ado, let's bring Aravind on board and start talking about his journey, his ideas towards what can happen in this country, and how to beat COVID as well, especially if you are a B2B, B2C company struggling in these times. So Aravind, hi, how are you?
Hi, Jignesh. Thank you very much. I'm doing well. Obviously, its own challenges in COVID days, but definitely taking best out of this time.
Thank you very much for taking out time, Aravind, and joining us this evening. For all the attendees, a quick input. There is a survey running in front of your screen right now. It will be closed in the next 30 seconds. So please try to answer the questions on the survey. There are 4 questions, and then we'll start the session with those data points from those questions itself. So I'm just pausing for the next 10 seconds, and quickly we'll come back after these 10 seconds. We almost have 80% of the people already taken the poll. Great. So we are ending the poll now. You can all see the results on the screen. How many of you have ever used Rapido? It looks like 25% of today's attendees have been customers of Rapido earlier, especially the pre-COVID era.
Yeah.
And we also asked this question, can you guess the number of bike taxis available on the platform before COVID? A lot of people, the major response was 1 lakh bike taxis, but otherwise the next distribution is 10,000, 50,000, and some people even rated 5 lakhs. Can you guess the number of registered users on Rapido? It says again, 5 lakhs is the biggest guess. And can you guess the number of daily rides that happen on the platform? Looks like 50,000 and 1 lakh have a greater number. So Aravind, why don't you help us answer these questions with the real stats out there on the app itself? I think it's an app available on both App Store and Play Store. Is that right?
Yeah, yes, Jignesh. I think definitely this poll shows that there is a lot of work that we have to do in terms of telling how big we are to general people. That is huge takeaway. But yeah, I mean, right from the start, we always want to be I mean, very down to earth, not talking too much about how big we are, more focusing on business than on maybe PR. So there's a lot of things that has been inherent on our DNA. But yeah, definitely I would love to say in terms of how big we are, just from these numbers, definitely all the guesses are wrong. We are way different or way bigger than
beaten those?
yeah, we are definitely way bigger than what you guys are thinking. So number one, in terms of bike taxis available, we have more than, for every quarter, we have more than 5 lakh drivers or captains is what we call, more than 5 lakh captains on our platform on quarterly basis, who does at least one transaction a quarter. So yeah, only 7% of you guessed right.
You're indirectly creating employment for more than 5 lakh people on a quarterly basis.
Yeah, I'll talk a bit more about how deep we are in terms of creating employment, but that is high level. Can you guess number of registered users? Again, I think only 5% of you guessed it right. We have more than 25 lakh registered users on our platform. Definitely, it's been around more than 4 years that we started, and then cumulatively Android, iOS together, we have more than 25 lakh users on our platform. Yeah, so the last thing.
Number of daily rides before COVID. Yes, we all know that today it's not as much as it used to be. But before COVID, what was the number of daily rides?
Yeah, we used to do around 5 lakh transactions per day. So yeah, I think, I mean, before talking about the numbers, maybe I would love to talk a bit more about what has made us possible for us to achieve these numbers, and how's the entrepreneur journey, especially the first 2-3 years of starting something, and then where we are right now in terms of after COVID, how we are shaping up after impact.
So then, without any further delay, let's start there. Can you help us first start with your personal journey? Where do you come from? What's your background? Are you the first generation entrepreneur? Do you have any family people who inspired you earlier? So let us start with your personal background, and then we'll deep dive into the business.
Yeah, I think so. I'm from Andhra, coming from, maybe you can call it as tier 4, tier 5 city, a city or village which has a population of less than maybe 15-20,000. I think, I mean, I'm maybe the first guy who did graduation in my family, maybe a first IIT in my village. I think, but more than that, starting something was never in my plan. I mean, even when I was doing IIT, when I joined Flipkart, starting something on my own, I always used to think starting something on your own requires a different skills, maybe a different idea. It's not easy. That used to be my mentality while I was studying at IIT. Even though there used to be a lot of activities at college, a lot of entrepreneur cells that used to happen, but I was never part of those because I always used to think that maybe I'm not someone who can start on my own, right? So that was how, and definitely family background is again a business, at a very small scale business, having an SME kind of a business, and none of my parents are educated beyond +1, +2. But yeah, I've been to IIT, and then after IIT, I joined Flipkart. I think that's where your first experience of what is a startup mean, or what it takes for someone to start, or it takes someone to lead a team. More on you are seeing people who are building something from scratch. Flipkart gave us a huge exposure at a very, very early days of the career. I mean, joining a startup at an young age. I mean, right after your graduation, you joined Flipkart, which is actually growing at the time. This is back in 2012. I've been a part of a team where they take care of logistics. So Flipkart has its own logistics called eCart. So being part of the team where growing eCart from maybe 4-5 cities to more than 100 to 200 cities. So have seen the journey that how big a logistics as an opportunity is, and Flipkart being an e-commerce company, the need of them to start logistics in terms of why logistics is required from a customer experience point of view or scalability point of view. I think that's where I realized that starting something and doing something else for a customer point of view to make the business much more larger than what you envisioned. So that's where I got the confidence that I think, I mean, if you see the managers or maybe directors at Flipkart, a lot of people are maybe with 4 or 5 years of experience, because e-commerce itself doesn't have a lot of experience in India, right? So you can't get experienced people who can lead e-commerce. So a lot of people are learning as in Flipkart and then growing and then becoming a directors and then leading the teams and growing their own category, etc. So that gave definitely me a confidence that you can start something. It's not that tough. The only thing that is required is some clarity on what you need to build or what you are building it for. And then we realized...
We'll go to the startup in a while. But before we go there, let me ask you this one question. Back in 2012, I don't think Flipkart is as famous as it is now. So yeah, it's a decent, very early stage company, maybe just raised some good rounds of money and etc. So was that your dream job to join back in the college, or you made a choice to join a company which is growing at that point? So how was it like when you joined Flipkart?
Yeah, so again, as I said, it was not a planned event. Joining Flipkart is not a planned event for sure. I mean, just like everyone attended all the companies that came for, but definitely maybe I was more interested. I mean, even though I'm from a mechanical engineering background, but definitely I'm more interested on something to do with something non-mechanical. It just there is love for math, love for business is there. In terms of joining, that kind of opportunity was there, consulting slash anything that can do with numbers. That was the priority. But just like everyone attended all the interviews, but Flipkart was on the initial days and I was able to crack it. And I just accepted. I don't know. I never shopped at Flipkart while I was interviewing at Flipkart. I don't know what they do literally. I just know it's a shopping company, but you don't know anything else because I'm not even a user of Flipkart when I give an interview. So I just accepted and then I joined. I didn't know how big we are. What does a unicorn mean? What does a valuation mean? You don't know all these things just coming out of college.
Awesome. So now from Flipkart, how did you end up creating India's biggest bike taxi? Flipkart has never been into selling bikes, for that matter, not even bike taxis. So what happened? What made you create this startup?
Yeah, I think strongly what I believe is when you're working at somewhere, I think apart from just looking at what that company does, it's more about the structure of the company in terms of, if you see Flipkart is a marketplace where you have sellers, you have buyers, and you have a platform. So if you relate any new age e-commerce kind of a companies, maybe if you see Rapido or if you see any other education companies, it's a marketplace is a word where you learned after going to Flipkart, where there are two sides of marketplace. You have buyers, you have sellers, and you are a platform. So apart from that similarity, there is nothing else for Flipkart versus Rapido, etc. So it's more about, we knew that marketplaces are the next big thing that is going to happen in India. It's just because we have all the sectors are unorganized. If you see e-commerce, there are a lot of sellers, there are a lot of buyers, even before Flipkart, but it's just an unorganized sector. It's the same thing where maybe even a cab taxis or an auto, if you see, it's an unorganized sector where you have autos, but you don't have a good way of booking it. You have cabs, but there is no good way of booking it and then going and commuting it. So I think it's more about that experience than anything else. Nothing to do with e-commerce as such, because we don't sell anything right now. We only provide service. But to answer to your question, I think there is something else between Rapido and Flipkart. Rapido was not my first startup. So in Flipkart, when I was working for e-cart logistics, I realized that there is a huge opportunity in logistics to solve. And then I started my first venture called the Carrier, which is into trucking space. Say, if you want to move any heavier good from one place to other, then you can order maybe a Tata Ace from our platform, and then we help you to commute from one place to other. So that's exactly how we started. The name is Carrier. We launched in 2014. We ran for almost 1 year. We raised an initial capital of 150K for that. But somewhere there are two reasons why we had to pivot from Carrier to Rapido. One thing is there is always maybe a founder market fit. I can use that word, where you don't get excited for certain kind of businesses, or you are not for that. For example, when we were doing Carrier, it is very highly on B2B logistics. So there's a huge sales funnel that we have to go to, that approaching a client, telling him to use our service, doing a pilot, and then finally onboarding him, and then getting into revenue. All these things used to take 2-3 months of time, and then those, and we were not excited with the growth rate. Even though we used to get more than 1 crore of top line, it's a profitable business, but somewhere the energy of you are young and I don't want to waste time on sales funnel and then struggling for growth, etc. So that was the mindset where we somewhere, all the founders, we said, I think it's a good business to be at. You can make money, but that was not the reason you came out. We came out saying that we want to create an impact at scale. It can't be a short impact. We want to create an impact at scale. And then we realized that B2C, the kind of impact that it can generate and the kind of scale that it can go through is a lot different from a B2B kind of impact. And then we decided to take a pivot from Carrier to Rapido. There is no, again, if you ask me what, maybe I want to use a word where we are not entrepreneurs by choice. Sorry, we are entrepreneurs by choice. We are not by chance. It's not that we got an aha moment saying that I want to create this, let's go and create it. We took a choice saying that I want to do something, and then figure out what is that. And then you filtered on saying that what are you good at, what is the experience that you have, and you need to have some kind of learnings that you already have. I mean, coming from logistics, IIT background, maybe I can't start something in maybe biotechnology company, right? I mean, we don't want to just go in that way. Using our expertise, what can you do to create an impact at scale? That's where Rapido has born. But when Rapido has started, I think this is something I really say to a lot of budding entrepreneurs, that any success, there is a huge, it's not only about Rapido, but success doesn't come overnight for sure. It takes a lot of effort and definitely a lot of persistence. If you ask me, when Rapido has started in 2015 October, there are more than 25 other companies who started bike taxi along with us, 2-3 weeks here and there. But if you see right now, Rapido is the only one who are existing and who survived.
Flourishing.
Along when there is a huge competition outside, right? Because mobility is a sector where a lot of people raised a lot of money, and there are global competitors. The product has been enhanced by the time that we launched. Huge acquisition that happened for the competitors at the time. So it was not the right time to start mobility when we started. But I should say there has to be a huge belief from the founder side that what the market that you are entering into. Because when we entered into mobility, Olas and Ubers of the world, they are fulfilling to certain kind of users. Maybe imagine that you pay mass audience paying 100 to 150 rupees for a 4-5 kilometer trip is not sustainable. You can't attract a huge mass audience or middle class audience. So that was the belief for us, saying that the market segment that we are entering into is not the top 4-5% premium users, but a lot of mass audience who can't afford cabs. That was the strong belief. It definitely took its own sweet time, especially because we are creating a category. If you see bike taxi, I mean, before Rapido existed, you sitting behind a stranger doesn't exist in India. On a two-wheeler, sitting behind a stranger, like an auto rickshaw or like a cab, it doesn't exist. So I think that is where we know when you are creating a segment, sometimes it takes time. sometime it has to be until you prove it, you are not able to raise money, you're not able to grow, etc. So that we know as a backup, saying that it will take time. Nothing can be done within a year or 2 years. In our journey, when we have if you see the timeline wise, when we were pivoting from Carrier to Rapido, we hardly have maybe running a B2C company is a lot different from running a B2B company in terms of capital that you need to allocate for marketing. The marketplace itself takes some time to mature enough, etc. So we have to spend money. You can't get growth without spending money. When I say spending money, doing marketing dollars, acquiring customers, bringing drivers. And if you don't get enough number of orders, your drivers will leave. If your drivers are there and if they're not providing good experience, then customers will leave. So there is a huge challenge in terms of how do you manage that marketplace. So we literally have money for maybe 3 months when we were pivoting from Carrier to Rapido, and we need to prove to the market that people are ready to go on a two-wheeler, and we have to prove to investors and then raise money. So that 3 months is what we had in mind, that okay, we need to prove something in 3 months and raise something and then scale. I think one thing that I should say that maybe it looks like right now Rapido has raised a lot of money, but
just a second there. How much did you raise until now?
We raised around $85 million till now.
Can you please convert that into crores for us?
So we raised around 550 crores.
550 crores.
Yeah, we raised 500 to 500.
Awesome. So an Indian startup with a young founder as young as you and other team members, I think that's a great achievement by itself in first raising the money. But of course, there's always about how do you use that money to bring that out. Let's discuss about that too. So
Sure.
Aravind, just before we move forward, you mentioned that you took a pivot after you realized that the founder market fit was not there. So what was the challenge then? Now we know that it all happened very well, but what was the challenge then? Because you already raised some money by then from an investor pitching the B2B business, and then now you have to revamp the whole model, convince them. At the same time, build this whole platform from up. You might not be left with a lot of money there. So what happened? That journey of switch is more interesting for us.
Yeah. See, when we were doing B2B, and see, there are some advantages of being small. There are some advantages of being a startup versus a very big organization. Because here, what you need is, one, you need to have a very high conviction. And generally, when investors are coming and investing in a very early stage company, they always have this in mind that can these founders do something? They never, I think, at least in the at the retrospective, I don't think our investors said that Carrier will become big. They always said, I think Aravind and Pawan and Rishi can make this big. So I think that is super important for anyone who is going and raising for the first time. They kind of discount that what a company that you started and where will it go. They will always think that it is going to completely go in a different way. If you see a lot of startups right now, a lot of startups are actually pivoting. Take Flipkart, take Swiggy, take Ola. Every company right now is not what they started. Everyone changed based on circumstances. Everyone built based on the opportunity. But what it is like the persistence from the founders that I want to do something and there is a market, let's go and grab it. I think that is more important. So
let me just reiterate that for the attendees' sake. You are saying that the investors invested in you, not in the idea. Am I right?
Yeah, definitely. We can say that it's also because when we told our investors that I think we want to pivot from Carrier to Rapido, because they are in a journey in the initially, generally your investors are very close to you, interact very frequently in terms of what's happening or what are the challenges, etc. So we told them the challenges that, see, we want to do it much more larger than what we are doing right now. And I think apart from career, I think we have seen a huge opportunity, or we want to explore a much more larger opportunity. And we didn't go out and said that, okay, we are shutting down that company and then completely opening a new company. We didn't do that because we don't want to make our early backers, definitely we don't want to
Burn the bridges.
yeah. So what we told is like, we'll continue with the same team, same investors, same cap table, but we'll do a completely different business. And we are confident because it is much more larger. The idea that we have gone into Rapido is a utility product where you have to come out and you will use something or the other transportation options, right? So I think that's where we got investors were supportive enough. I think that is one other thing that I want to make a very strong statement, that your early investors definitely should understand risk. I think generally people understand the risk in investing in an early stage company, but they will always should be open enough to take the feedback from the market and change it based on how the market needs. So your rapport between your existing first set of investors versus founders should be very high. So I think if you always have a choice to make between money and investors mindset, with again here and there 20-30% valuation, 20-30% number of amount of money, I always prefer a great investor who understands the business and understand you a lot more better than who is giving much more larger money.
Understood.
Yeah.
Awesome. Now let's switch the gears. Let's get into after you pivoted, you launched the app. Now, can you quickly take us through that journey? What went well? The good things first.
Yeah, so definitely, see again, the point here is a startup have an advantage of you can make things happen much faster than incumbents, right? Say for us to launch anything, if I take hardly a week or 2 weeks to do it, I have a huge go-to-market advantage compared to anyone else. So from the idea of let's do Rapido to launching the Rapido took us hardly 15-20 days in terms of, okay, let's do this and then launch it and get your first customer.
So you created an MVP and launched in less than 3 weeks.
Yeah, exactly. So
that's a great point. A lot of people are asking that question. How did you create something and then went to investors and what else? You are saying that it only takes less than 2 to 3 weeks to create an MVP, put it in the market.
Yeah. So I think, see, generally your MVP should be like an MVP. You should not beautify it. You should not solve for every use case that you can think of. That's exactly the difference between MVP 1, 2, 3, right? So even right now we take that approach that whatever we launch right now, we always release in phases, saying that it should be simple. If you see our app, even 2 years back or even right now, it is simple and stupid. You will understand. If you just go there, you can just book it. It's not super complicated. I mean, that's exactly the huge learnings that we had taken, that the market segment that you have, they value the app, which is simple to use it, and it has to do what it's supposed to do. That's it. How is it happening in the back end? How is it happening? It's none of their business. It should be super simple. I mean, yeah, so we took around less than 3 weeks to launch it. And definitely 2 months or first 3 months to raise our capital.
So what about the users, first set of users and riders?
Yeah, so maybe if you understand the transportation business, it is more on local business. Say, if you want to go from maybe high-tech city to Banjara Hills, it is a constraint. You can constrain your customers. I mean, no point of launching, say, for understanding here, say no point of launching entire Hyderabad and Secunderabad when you want to launch, especially in transportation. You can say that I'm a transportation provider with 5 kilometers from high-tech city. So that's exactly how we started. Say in Bangalore, we said HSR Kormangla BTM. This is what we launch. And then we only help customers to move within this area, because the challenge in our business is if you have drivers spread over the entire city, then you need to have huge number of captains in the entire city to make sure that every customer gets someone or the other captain. So that's the reason we said we are constrained. We are launching only in this area. Anyone who want to go within this area, we can deliver. So our initially, I think.
Aravind, looks like your video is freezing up.
Can you? Is it fine now? Hello. Hello.
Yeah, we can hear you, please.
Sorry. Our initial, it took us around a couple of months for us to reach around 300 rides per day. Again, we only had some numbers saying that, okay, it should be 100, 200 to go to investors. Otherwise, if you're just doing 1 or 2 orders, it doesn't make, at least in our business, because you are saying it's a utility product, you are saying it is a cheaper, faster way of commute. So it has to be at some scale. So we had that in mind that we'll go to investors when we are doing 200 orders per day. And then we took around 45 days to reach that number, 200 orders per day. And then by the time we got our first term sheet in 3 months, we were doing anywhere closer to 400 to 500 orders per day.
Awesome. So what's the first investment story like? So when you reach out to the investors with this concept, when it was already crowded and you only have some 300 or 400 rides, so what was the reaction from the market and how did you crack your first investment?
So I think huge, I can literally say that we approached a hell lot of investors, and the major challenge is every investor in India has already taken a bet on mobility, either in Ola or Taxi for Sure at the time, or they decided that they don't want to put in a mobility. So something or the other already happened because it is an industry which is 4 years old. So they are started in 2011. So everyone might have approached each and every investor at the time. So we pitching and saying that we are starting one other mobility. And during the same time, already Ola existed, Uber existed. There are already $1 billion companies at the time. So now you are going afresh, right? So that when we have started, I think we know that getting investments is not easy, especially because of the obvious reasons. But we try to go and tell to our investors on why we think Rapido will either coexist or maybe be a market leader in mobility in 3-4 years down the line. It's just because at that time, or even now, if you see the cab ride sharing as a market, it's prominent in metropolitan cities. If you go to smaller cities, it doesn't exist. If you go to cities like Vijayawada, Guntur, Kurnool, it doesn't exist, where people don't commute on cabs from one place to other. So there's a huge white space that no one has cracked, and we have an opportunity. So that was obviously that was what our belief is, and that's what investors were aligned, saying that I think there is much larger market. And it doesn't mean that $1 billion doesn't mean that they can take away the entire market throughout the country. So I think we approached more than 100 investors easily before we got our first term sheet. I think there's an advice that I give, that whomever that investor that I used to go and meet, and I mean, the hit ratio is always 1%, right? 99% of the investors will always say no to your idea. But what I used to take from that meeting is, whoever used to say no, I used to ask them to give me 1 or 2 contacts where they can connect with. Because being a first-time entrepreneur, never interacted with investors, don't have a huge contact. So I don't know how to approach and how to pitch it, and what kind of investors will come at what stage. It's a completely new for me, and none of my friends were startup founders, etc., etc. So at least what I used to take away from that meeting is at least connect me to 1 or 2 investors. So literally my first term sheet came from one of the investors who connected to someone, and then it just happened. So I think, and the other thing is, that is more on the first term sheet story, but the huge challenges comes after you raising money. In more on how do you put your scale from there, and how do you raise your next raise of capital, especially because mobility is something which requires huge capital. So when we launched in, I think this in March 2016, we just got the money in the bank, and within 1 week, both the other players have launched bike taxi. So Ola, Uber. We didn't even get 1 month of time to implement something where we can say that we are different compared to competition, because we just got competition right after a month of we launched. But long story short, it took us 3 years, literally, for us to raise the next round. 2 years from there. In 2016, so in 2018 April, we raised our next round. And this time also, we raised from an investor never heard of, not from India, never invested in India, never invested in mobility, but someone who has seen that there is something that can be built, even though there is a competition. So I think I'll tell you what made us to raise that capital. There are three things that Rapido is known for. One, again, as I said, we proved to the market that there is a market in tier 2 cities. So we launched one tier 2 city, and we took 4 or 5 months to prove to the market that there is a huge market in tier 2. So we were able to prove that. And number two, one of the advantage of Rapido is all our captains are also part-time captains. Like maybe like people like you and me, whenever we are free for 2-3 hours, you make extra money by driving in Rapido. That creating part-time captains as a culture gave us huge benefit of number of captains that we have compared to anyone else in the market. So we were able to prove that there is a less friction for people to onboard in Rapido. And because of that, we were able to create huge supply. So that is number two. And number three, which is something right now, it's a very big business for us, which is logistics. We said on a two-wheeler, instead of people delivery, we'll also do food delivery and make the captain well utilized throughout the day. Because generally commutes happen in the morning and the evening, and in the afternoon, generally people are free because people don't commute to office or colleges at that time. So that is these three things, proving these three things to the market gave that confidence to, again, someone or the other investors saying that there is a huge market, that there is a different way. This is not a mobility company. This is not in one other mobility company that we have seen. It's a huge difference from what others have built. So once we are able to replicate that, I think then we were able to raise around $3 million in April. And then came the blitz scaling as a concept. If you see the snapshot of this, I'm talking about April 2018. It is maybe before pre-COVID. It's just 2 years before April 2018. We were doing 6,000 transactions per day. To March 2020, we were doing 5 lakh transactions per day.
3,000 to 5 lakh.
Yeah, literally we grew 100 times in 2 months. And we used to be in 3 cities in 2018 April. And right now we are in 100 cities 2 years down the line. So that is the scale. Again, once the money comes in, there is the advantage of when the money comes after you build the base, then your scale, the kind of growth rate will be a lot different because we have gone through a lot of challenges, ups and downs in those 3 years that helped us to build the product at a different scale, to build that bonding between the teams, and to able to replicate what we were doing at a very small scale to multiple cities. So the tough times of 3 years made us worth it to prove that we can able to do that bit scaling once we have that money in the bank.
So the principle of bamboo grass applies here. So for the bamboo, for it to come out of the soil, it takes 5 years. But once it does it, in less than 5 months, it grows to the full height.
Yeah.
So you're absolutely great point there, Aravind. Now, I have a question now. You are a tough competitor to Olas and Ubers, and you are scaling pretty much well. And you are competing with them not in the Tier 2, Tier 1 cities, but you're going into Tier 3, Tier 4 cities.
Yeah.
Now, did the Ola or Uber try to acquire you?
Yeah, I mean, so I think maybe it'll be more on diplomatic question. See, the way that generally happens is we were able to show them that there is a market that you guys are not seeing it. There is a market that you guys can't replicate it because it's not easy. Every segment is different. Getting a cab captain, cab driver to an auto captain to a bike captain, it requires a different focus. And what it requires for generally to build a vertical focused transportation is focus on that category. So definitely we were able to show that, and that's the reason, even though both of these competitors started along with the same time, we are 2-3 times bigger than them in terms of in bike taxi. Again, we always have that on the table, saying that we always have that option, saying that okay, if you want to join with someone, it's always a kind of an open, right? But we knew that India transportation is more mass oriented than premium oriented. There are more than 300 million commutes that happen on public transportation. Compared to both these players together, they're doing maybe a 2 million to 2.5 million transactions per day, right? So the huge market, there's no point of going
Competing with them when you have other market to attract.
yeah. So that was our thought process, and then we said we always were like, let's build it, and if you're doing well, the option always exists, right? So there's no point of settling down when there is a huge upside of taking some more risk. So that was the point.
Awesome. So let's step out off track now. So where did you meet your co-founders? We know that you are 3 co-founders who started the Rapido, and today it's a major success. But where did you find them? How to find a good co-founder, and where did you find them?
Yeah, I think this is super important question, guys. I think whoever are going to start their own startup or join some startup, very important thing for any startup to succeed is the kind of maybe a bonding that you have in your co-founders, because things are not good always. A lot of time things are bad, especially in the first 2-3 years. And someone who stays along with you and shares that common pain and common vision is super important. I mean, definitely I'm blessed there. So Pawan, the other co-founder, we are childhood buddies, right from 9th standard, we are together, 9th, 10th, +1, +2, we were together. And then he went to IT Kharagpur, I went to IT Bhubaneswar, and we were always in touch. We never thought that we'll start something on our own, but it's a destiny where he wanted to do something on his own and I wanted to do something, and we were like, why not, right? And that's how we met. And then Rishi and Pawan, they knew each other because even the commonality in them also is like Rishi was coming out of college and wanted to do something on his own, and we were looking for the right partner from a technology background, and that's where we said, okay, let's go and do something together. And that's how we got together, and then where we are.
Awesome. So can we quickly get into the tough parts that you have faced as well? I believe every founder goes through this part where your bank balance goes to 0 and you have to figure out a way to survive, pay salaries, and then bounce back. So what, did you ever face such situation in the journey of Rapido?
I mean, definitely, yes. I think one of the, I think this is a story for many of the startups in which you will generally not hear of because you only see the success part of it. But definitely in the first 3 years of Rapido, I mean, our bank balance went to 0 maybe 3 times. It's just how we coped up with that and how we just came out. I think obviously there is a lot of things that happen in those times, but finally, again, as I said, it's more about that persistence that I want to make it big. Come what may, whatever happen, I'm going to stay here. So that hustle is what made us stay. I think that's how, yeah.
Any tip for these young founders, especially when they really go through the tough situation and they want to quit? What do they think of? What should they think of?
Definitely never give up. I think there is no other word better than that, saying that I think it's worth trying for some more time. Because when you were starting something, you always came with that mindset that it will take more time than what you expected. You might be expecting realistically 1 year, 2 years, but it is definitely more than that. I think that is the only thing. How do you sustain and how do you exist in the market? Just don't die. So how do you make it happen? It's more about individuals' way of doing it. But that's how I see. Just stay there, don't die.
Awesome. Now let's try to look at after COVID days. So we all know that the world has got to stagnance and no more transportation, no more traveling, no more commute. So definitely your business might have been affected. So what happened to Rapido during COVID and how did you cope up with it? What's the new strategy that you have adapted to? Can you throw some light on that aspect as well?
Yeah, so definitely, maybe because we have less time, I'll just make it quick. I mean, post-COVID, we were looking at how can we make, because there are a lot of people where livelihood is dependent on Rapido. When I talked about more than 5 lakh captains who make money with us. Now suddenly the business went to zero in April and May. So how do you and but there are a lot of layoffs happening, a lot of salary cuts happening. So how do you still make money for captains, right? So that's where we utilized our next business vertical, which is logistics. So we said if people are not coming out, people order something frequently to their doorstep. So let's go and launch by food delivery as a segment, and we were able to scale. So food delivery as a major segment, and we were able to replicate that in multiple cities. Now our food delivery is like 40% of our business during the last month, and in the long term we'll see 25 to 30% of our business coming from logistics. So we are a logistics provider for Swiggy, Zomato, JioMart, for everyone, and we deliver food, grocery for all these companies.
Awesome. So you pivoted, you used your previous experience of logistics to solve the problem and do that. Now, that means you are definitely partnering with companies like Swiggy's and Zomato's, is that right?
Yeah, exactly. So we went with an approach of there is no point of creating each and every segment on our own. There are companies who are doing it already, and we need to enable logistics for them. And we opened our logistics network to everyone. So Swiggy, Zomato's, and then any small scale merchant. If you want to send anything, if you want to do home delivery for your small scale business, you can do it.
So you're partnering with other companies and then moving forward with that. Awesome. So that's a great strategy to work on.
Yeah.
Now let's look at a few audience questions. So while I was asking you questions, these are mostly from the audience itself, but there are some specific questions to you. How many two-tier cities do you operate in? And what can, a few examples, if you can name them.
Yeah.
And there are also questions on your split on full-time and part-time captains.
Yeah.
What's the percentage looking like today?
Sure. So, I mean, maybe just to clear, there are a couple of questions in terms of our business model. So we don't own any vehicle. All the vehicles are owned by individual captains, and they come and work on our platform, right? So none of the vehicles are owned by us, and 75 to 80% of our captains are part-timers. They work for 2 hours, 3 hours on our platform, compared to full-timers who work for 8 to 10 hours. And in terms of tier 2, we are present in more than 75 tier 2, tier 3 cities. For example, we are present in Vijayawada. We are also present in Rajahmundry, Kakinada, Warangal, Karimnagar, Kurnool. So these are the kind of cities. Whichever city has more than 500K population, we are there. So that's how we see, because commutes are very directly proportional to the population / the existing transportation challenges. So the way that we choose is wherever we have good population and no proper public infrastructure, we use that.
So if you are partnering with all these companies, so who is your competitor then?
I think, right now, if you can't compare Rapido to any other company right now, just because the way that we approach the market is we have some strengths and we built products on that strength. Our strength is captains. So we said we will make sure that captains make more money on our platform compared to any other platform. So that's strength that we have. And we said we approached Swiggy, Zomato's, and that's how we were able to build on our strength. We do people transportation and we do logistics. So one is a B2C and one is a B2B. So in B2B, because of the scale of supply that we have, the scale of drivers that we have, we were able to provide the logistics at much more cheaper price compared to anyone else. It's just because no one else has this kind of liquidity. I'm talking about the number of captains that we have is more than Swiggy and Zomato. I mean, you always see Swiggy and Zomato captains because they're wearing t-shirts, but you don't recognize that someone who is just going beside you is actually a Rapido captain. He's either delivering.
There's no uniform for Rapido captains.
Yeah, it's not, again, it's a part-timer. So generally the challenges is that is the difference between when you're building a product for part-timer, you need to give enough flexibility for them. You can't impose rules and restrictions for these part-time captains because they are coming to your platform for flexibility. And you can't take away that flexibility by imposing them some kind of rules and regulations for them. So that is how we see, and that's the reason we didn't make the branding mandatory. Even though branding has an advantage of people will recognize you, but that is against the core philosophy of giving any kind of restrictions to our part-time captains. But
Awesome.
you will see us again. But slowly you will see us doing brandings, but at least high level, these are things. That's the reason we don't do the mandatory t-shirts as a concept.
And do you have any female riders also?
Um, um, Not a lot, I should say. Definitely, there are few, but see, there are few other challenges before making female captains on our platform. Because see, right now there is an infrastructure that should be ready for female captains because on the on ground safety. Because not every time the captains are busy, they need to wait for an order, so they need to go to very remote areas. So there are few things that we have to make it work, and then we will scale at very high level with the female captains. But as of now, we have female passengers, obviously, but female captains are very few on our platform.
Awesome. So, but the lot of questions are coming in on how do you verify that the riders for the safety of both the stranger who is taking the ride as well as the person who is riding also. It's a safety issue on both the sides.
Yeah, yeah.
How are you ensuring that today?
Yeah, so there are two kind of safeties. One, the way that they drive is more an accidental safety, and number two, a threat from captain to the customer. I mean, these are the two different ways that how I see safety. The first angle is even when we launched Rapido, one of the huge challenge that customers' perception is two-wheelers are not safe. People drive rashly. How does my safety is there, etc. Right? So one of the things that we have launched is, I think we are the only platform for almost 2 years when we launched that providing insurance for both customers and captains for any kind of challenges, right? Any accident happen, or even it can be a minor injury or a major injury, everything will be taken care by our insurance partner. So that is more on if something happens, but to make sure that it doesn't happen, there are a few things that we do. Right from captains come with 2 helmets, one for himself and one for the customer. And the other thing that we also do is we track the speed of the captains. We have our own telematics in the app. And if the speed crosses certain limit, then we give warnings to our captains. And if it is much more repetitive in nature, then we also deactivate the captains. So it's more on the person, in terms of safety. In terms of, so all the captains, we verify all the documents right from Aadhaar, PAN, on the vehicles, etc. And the other thing that we do is our customers obviously rate every captain in terms of their experience with that captain. And if we have any bad experiences because of misbehaving or overspeeding, then more than 2-3 warnings, they are completely deactivated from the platform. So very strict measures on safety. And a lot of checks and balances for if nothing, to make sure nothing happens. The combination of that makes the Rapido safer compared to a safer transportation platform.
So awesome! That's a great journey, great product, great feature sets, and your will and passion towards creating that strong economic impact on captains.
Yeah,
that's very important today. That's exactly what will create the economy for us, boosted back again, especially more than 5 lakh riders making decent amount of their wages on your platform. I don't know whether you're making profits or not, but you're definitely helping a lot of families sleep well at night.
yeah.
So thanks to you and your team for that. And one last question. Yes, you are now fighting like everyone else in the COVID. So do you have anything to offer to the businesses, or anything to the customers, or any message that you would like to give it back to the people of what you're trying to do? The floor is yours now.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Ignesh. I think I don't want to do a lot of sales pitch over here, but definitely, I mean, whoever has not tried Rapido, I think definitely an open environment like Rapido bikes is much more safer than going into some closed transportation option. So I think, again, if I don't want people to come out in these times, but if you're coming out and if you want to commute, Rapido is always there, and we'll ensure. We already started one of the initiative, I think in Hyderabad, it's already been launched, that we are introducing a shields between the customer and captain. So we have an physical shield between customer and captain, so to make sure that there is not any physical touch that happens. So that is one of the initiatives that we took, but there is a lot of other things that we are doing in backend to make sure both our captains and customers are safe. And we also have, I think, we also have something called Rapido Corporate. So if anyone of you want to enable your transportation to your employees, I think happy to talk about. I think maybe I will send the email ID to Jignesh where you guys can reach out to that email ID. We can enable the employee transportation with all the safety measures that we take and giving it to your employees. So
in fact, you can quickly read out the email ID so that if at all there is a business email ID that anyone
yeah, I mean, as of now, you can definitely drop it to me. I'll take it personally. So Aravind@rapid.bike. Yeah, but I think to majorly, I think youngsters. I mean, irrespective whether there is a COVID or not, generally the startup is something which you come for a reason where you want to create an impact, irrespective of circumstances. See, a lot of guys feel like COVID is one of the COVID is a huge pandemic or COVID is a huge setback. But as an entrepreneur who has been doing my own startup for the last 3-4 years, there are a lot of bigger challenges than COVID that you have to face. Right from getting a team, getting investors, proving business models, scaling it. So it those challenges are also even more tougher than the COVID. So COVID should not be a reason for people to say that, okay, I don't want to start because of COVID, because you never know what's going to happen. So you always need to come with that kind of risk capabilities. And I think because of this time, there are a lot of businesses which can thrive because of the circumstances that we are right now. So I think
absolutely
there is never
absolutely
a right time. There is never a right time to start. So if someone wants to start, it's always good to start faster than you think.
In fact, as you rightly said, if you recall the story of Airbnb and WhatsApp, both of them were started in the recession of 2008 and 2009.
Yeah.
So I think this opens up more opportunities than ever for companies and new ideas too.
Yeah.
So awesome. Thank you very much, Aravind. One last question we'll wrap this up with. So what's the next step for Rapido? Is it international expansion, IPO, or raise even more money?
I think, see, expansion, I always tell this that Jaipur in India is bigger than Colombo market, right? It's just India is super, super deeply penetrated. It doesn't make a lot of sense for us to go to international anytime soon. I think, again, as I said, India's potential is to reach 300 million commutes, and we are hardly less than 1% of the market. So right now, I think it's too early for us to do anything. But again, as I said, logistics is one of the huge opportunities that has opened up. So we are scaling that rapidly, and we are growing more than 100% in the last quarter. And then obviously mobility is much more larger than what we thought. So going deeper in mobility and then entering into logistics is the next big things that we are doing it.
Awesome. So thank you very much for taking out time this evening, Aravind, for us. And you have shared us great lessons and great experiences of your journey. And we are happy to celebrate it along with you that a person from the states of Telugu have achieved such tremendous success at this young age. So Aravind, thank you for your hard work behind this startup. And we are all there with you in this journey.
Sure. Thank you, Jignesh. Thank you, Srini, and thank you everyone for this opportunity, and all the best.
Awesome. So viewers, this is this week's webinar in the innovation economy. Now, next 2 weeks, we also have exciting speakers lined up. For the 19th of August, we have Christopher Gully from a co-founder from Graphite GTC, an Israeli company. And we also have Mr. Bhaskar Sunkara, the founding CTO of App Dynamics. So we are excited to have them host them the next 2 weeks. Please join us. Stay tuned for more updates. Thank you very much.